The great hall fell silent as Kexthara stepped forward. His blue-gray skin showed deep scars that ran across his chest and arms. The alien diplomat was old, even by his people's standards. He had lived for over 800 Earth years, and today he would tell a story that would change everything. Around him sat representatives from dozens of worlds. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had wings or multiple eyes. All of them were here for the same reason. They needed to decide if humans could join the Galactic Council. Most of them thought humans were too violent, too dangerous. "You fear the humans," Kexthara said in a voice that carried across the vast chamber. "You call them warlike. You say they are too savage to sit among civilized beings." He paused and looked at each delegation. "I have watched them for centuries. I have seen their wars. I have witnessed their battles. Can I tell you this? You are wrong about them." A tall, insect-like being from the hive worlds clicked its mandibles in disagreement. "They have fought each other for thousands of years. They turned their own planets into battlefields. How can such creatures be trusted?" Kexthara's large dark eyes reflected the chamber's lights. "Because I was there, I saw it all. And what I learned about humans in war taught me more about honor and all our peaceful civilizations combined." The chamber buzzed with whispers and strange alien sounds. How could this respected diplomat have watched humans for so long without anyone knowing? "It began by accident," Kexthara continued. 800 years ago, I was part of a scientific mission. We were studying primitive worlds when our ship was damaged by a solar storm. We crashed on the third planet of a small yellow star. The humans call it Earth. He moved to the center of the hall, his voice growing stronger. Our ship's cloaking device still worked, but our engines were destroyed. The repairs would take centuries with the materials we could find on that world. My crew decided to wait and observe while we slowly rebuilt our ship. At first, we thought the humans were just another violent species. They fought with crude weapons, swords and axes and spears. We watched from our hidden ship and recorded their wars for our archives. We thought we were watching animals fight over territory. Kexthara's expression changed. His alien features showed something that might have been wonder. "The first battle I witnessed was in the year humans call 1066. Two armies met on a field, in a place called Hastings. William, a Norman duke, fought against Harold, the Saxon king of England. The alien delegates leaned forward. Even the most hostile among them were curious now. I expected to see simple brutality. Instead, I saw something. That confused me. When Saxon warrior named Edmund fell wounded, his enemy stepped over his body to protect him from other fighters. This Norman soldier, Peter by name, could have taken Edmund's weapons and gold. Instead, he stood guard until Edmund's own men could carry him to safety. This made no sense to us, Kexthara admitted. In our own history, enemies were destroyed completely. There was no honor in showing mercy, no logic in protecting those who fought against you. We thought it was a mistake." He began to pace slowly, his voice taking on a rhythm like an ancient storyteller. "But then I saw it happen again, and again. Human warriors would risk their lives to save wounded enemies. They would share food with prisoners. They would help bury the dead from both sides after battle." A reptilian delegate from the cold worlds hissed softly. "This sounds like weakness, not strength." "That is what I thought too," Kexthara replied. "So I continued to watch. I learned their languages. I studied their customs. I wanted to understand this strange behavior. The battle at Hastings lasted all day. I watched as men fell by the hundreds. But I also watched as they helped each other. Saxon Thane named Alfred carried 3 wounded Normans to safety after his own king was killed. He had no reason to help them. His cause was lost. His king was dead. Yet he risked his life for men who had been his enemies hours before. The chamber was completely quiet now. Even the most skeptical delegates seemed drawn into the story. As the years passed, I saw this pattern everywhere humans fought. During their crusades, I watched Christian knight named Robert give water to dying Muslim warriors. In their civil wars, I saw brother help brother even when they fought on opposite sides. Kekstara stopped pacing and faced the assembled delegates directly. You see, I began to realize that humans do not fight the way we do. They do not fight for simple conquest or survival. They fight for ideas, for beliefs, for people they will never meet. I watched them develop rules for war. They created codes of honor that actually made fighting less efficient. They limited their own power to protect the innocent. They treated prisoners well, even when it cost them resources. No other species in the galaxy has ever done this. The Hive delegate clicked again. But they still kill. They still make war. Yes, Kekstara agreed. They make war, but they make it with purpose. They fight not because they love violence, but because they love something more than their own lives. He gestured to a display that showed images of Earth. I continued my observations as their technology improved. I watched them fight with gunpowder and cannons. I saw their great wars when millions died. And in every conflict, no matter how terrible, I saw the same thing: humans who valued honor above victory, mercy above efficiency. During their American Civil War, I watched Union soldier named Billy throw himself on a Confederate grenade to save both his own men and enemy prisoners. He died to protect people who had been trying to kill him minutes before. This was not weakness. This was something we had never seen before. Kekstara's voice grew quieter, but somehow more intense. I realized that what makes humans dangerous is not their violence. It is their willingness to die for principles. They will sacrifice everything for abstract ideas like freedom, justice, and the protection of the innocent. Other species fight until the cost becomes too high. Then they surrender or retreat. Humans fight until they win or until they are all dead, especially when they believe their cause is right. They cannot be predicted because they do not always act in their own best interests. The alien diplomat paused and looked around the chamber again. I spent centuries thinking I was studying a primitive, violent species. I thought I was watching savages learn to kill more efficiently. I was wrong. I was watching something unique. In the galaxy, a species that had learned to make war moral. They had taken the most terrible thing thinking beings can do to each other and found ways to do it with honor. You ask if humans can be trusted to sit among civilized worlds. I tell you that humans are more civilized than any of us. They have spent their entire history trying to find ways to fight fairly. They have rules for war that protect the weak. They show mercy to enemies. They risk their lives for strangers. Kekstara's expression became serious, almost grave. And there is something else you need to know. Something that happened 15 years ago that proves everything I have told you about humans. The chamber stirred with anticipation. The alien delegate from the crystal worlds spoke in a voice like breaking glass. What happened 15 years ago? Kekstara looked directly at the questioner. 15 years ago, my homeworld was invaded. My people faced extinction. And the only ones who came to help us were the humans. The violent, savage humans that you fear so much. They came without being asked. They fought without being paid. They died for people they had never met, on a world they had never seen, for no reason except that it was right. The chamber erupted in surprised voices and alien sounds. Representatives talked excitedly among themselves. How had they not known about this? Kekstara raised his hand for silence. Tomorrow, I will tell you about that war. I will tell you how humans saved my world and taught my people what courage really means. I will tell you why these savage humans are the only reason any of us are still alive to debate their worthiness today." He turned and began walking toward the exit. "Think about what I have said tonight. Think about a species that has spent thousands of years learning to fight with honor. And ask yourselves, in a galaxy full of threats, do you want such warriors as enemies or as allies?" The great hall remained silent long after Kexthara had left. The next day, the Galactic Council chamber filled again. Representatives from across the galaxy took their seats, eager to hear more Kexthara's story. The old alien diplomat stood in the center of the hall, his scarred hands clasped behind. His back. "Yesterday, I told you about the first human battles I witnessed," he began. "Today I will tell you how I learned that human honor is not something they outgrow. It is something that grows stronger with time." The chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of translation devices. Kexthara's voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast room. As centuries passed, I watched human technology advance. Their weapons became more deadly. Their wars grew larger. I expected their honor to disappear. I thought that as they gained power, they would abandon mercy. I was wrong again. He moved to a display that showed images of Earth from different time periods. In the year 1863, I witnessed a battle that changed my understanding forever. The humans called it Gettysburg. Two armies of the same species fought each other in what they called a civil war. The reptilian delegate from the cold worlds leaned forward. "Civil wars are the most brutal. When species fight themselves, they show no mercy." "That is what I expected to see," Kexthara agreed. But on the second day of that battle, I watched something that should have been impossible. A Union soldier named Peter Johnson was guarding Confederate prisoners when enemy artillery began falling around them. Kexthara's voice grew quiet, but every being in the chamber strained to hear. The explosion came without warning. Johnson saw the shell coming toward the group of prisoners. He could have run. He could have saved himself. Instead, he threw his body on top of the explosive device. Johnson died instantly, but his sacrifice saved 12 Confederate prisoners, men who had been shooting at his friends just hours before. These prisoners were his enemies. They would have killed him if they had the chance, yet he gave his life to protect them. A gasping sound came from several delegates. The concept was difficult for many species to understand, but that was not the end of the story. Kexthara continued. When Confederate soldiers found Johnson's body, they buried him with full military honors. They treated his corpse with the same respect they showed their own dead. His enemies honored his sacrifice. The alien diplomat began pacing slowly around the chamber's center. This confused me greatly. I spent weeks trying to understand why humans would protect those who fought against them. In my species' history, we had never seen such behavior. So I began studying human military codes. I learned about something they called the rules of war. These rules actually made fighting less efficient. They protected civilians. They required good treatment of prisoners. They banned certain weapons that were too cruel. The insect-like delegate from the hive worlds clicked loudly. Rules that limit military effectiveness are illogical. They help the enemy. Exactly what I thought, Kexthara replied. But then I realized something important. These rules were not about helping enemies. They were about remaining human while fighting. They were about not becoming monsters, even in the worst situations. He stopped pacing and faced the assembled delegates. I continued my observations through their industrial age. I watched as they developed weapons that could kill thousands. I saw their Great War, which they later called World War I. Millions died in trenches and mud. In December of 1914, something happened that I still struggle to believe. I was observing the Western Front when fighting suddenly stopped. Not because of orders or treaties, but because individual soldiers chose to stop. Kexthara's expression showed wonder even after all these years. On Christmas Day, soldiers from both sides climbed out of their trenches. British Lieutenant Henry Adams walked into the space between the armies. German officer Franz Müller did the same. They met in the middle and shook hands. What happened next defied every military principle I knew. The enemies shared food. They sang songs together. They played a game with a ball. They showed each other pictures of their families. For one day, they forgot they were supposed to kill each other. The chamber buzzed with confused sounds. Many delegates were having trouble understanding this concept. I reported this to my homeworld, Kexthara admitted. I told them that humans might be suffering from a mental illness that made them unable to fight properly. My superiors agreed that this behavior was clearly a defect. He paused and looked around the room. We were so wrong. What we saw as weakness was actually the greatest strength any species could have, the ability to see enemies as fellow beings, even in war. The Christmas truce ended after one day. The soldiers returned to their trenches and continued fighting. But they had proven something important. Even in the middle of terrible war, humans could choose compassion over hatred. Kexthara moved to another section of the display, showing images from a later period. 25 years later, humans fought an even larger war. World War II brought new horrors, weapons that could destroy entire cities, technologies designed for mass destruction. I thought surely this war would destroy human honor. The scale was too large, the weapons too terrible, the stakes too high. Again, I was proven wrong. During the Battle of the Bulge in 1944, I followed a human medic named Billy Thompson. His job was to help wounded soldiers, but he did something that amazed me. He helped everyone, American, German, British, French, anyone who was hurt. The alien diplomat's voice filled with emotion. I watched Thompson crawl through enemy fire 6 times in one day. He carried wounded German soldiers to safety just as carefully as he carried Americans. When other soldiers asked why he helped the enemy, he said something I will never forget. Kexthara looked directly at the most skeptical delegates. Thompson said, "When a man is bleeding, he's not my enemy anymore. He's just someone who needs help." This medic risked his life repeatedly for people who had been trying to kill him. But Thompson was not unique. I saw this behavior everywhere I looked. Human soldiers would share water with enemy prisoners. They would risk their lives to save enemy wounded. They developed rules that protected civilians even when those civilians supported their enemies. The crystal delegate spoke in her glass-like voice. But surely as their technology improved, they became more ruthless? No, Kexthara replied firmly. As their weapons became more powerful, their rules became stricter. They developed international laws about war crimes. They created courts to judge soldiers who broke the rules of honor. They held their own people accountable for behaving badly in war. Think about this carefully, he continued. Humans created weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They had the power to eliminate any enemy completely. But instead of using this power without limits, they created more rules, more restrictions, more ways to limit their own effectiveness in order to remain moral. He gestured to images showing modern human conflicts. I observed their wars in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. In every conflict, I saw the same patterns. Soldiers who risked everything to protect civilians. Warriors who treated prisoners with respect. Leaders who chose harder paths because they were more honorable. In Vietnam, I watched Marine Sergeant Danny Rodriguez carry wounded comrades through enemy territory for 3 days. He could have escaped alone many times. Instead, he refused to leave anyone behind. Rodriguez said something that perfectly captured human military thinking. Kex Thara's voice grew stronger. Rodriguez said, "We all go home, or none of us go home." This was not an official order. It was not required by any regulation. It was simply how humans chose to fight together, protecting each other, even when it was dangerous. During Operation Gothic Serpent in Somalia, I watched Ranger Lieutenant Kyle Morrison coordinate the rescue of wounded soldiers while under heavy fire. Morrison had multiple opportunities to retreat to safety. Instead, he stayed in the most dangerous position to help others escape. The alien diplomat looked around the chamber slowly. For 800 years, I have watched humans fight. There, technology advanced from swords to nuclear weapons. Their armies grew from hundreds to millions. But their core values never changed. They still protect the innocent. They still show mercy to enemies. They still risk their lives for abstract principles like freedom and justice. They still choose to do what is right instead of what is easy. Kex Thara's expression became serious. After September 11th, 2001, I watched New York City burn. I saw firefighter Captain Jack Sullivan and police officer Lisa Martinez run toward collapsing buildings while everyone else ran away. They died trying to save people they did not even know. That day, I realized that humans had created something unique in the galaxy, a warrior culture based on protection rather than conquest. They had learned to fight for others instead of just for themselves. He paused and looked at each delegation. In turn, this is why I chose to make contact with them 15 years ago. Not because they were peaceful, they were not, but because they were honorable. Because when the galaxy needed warriors who would fight for principle instead of profit, only humans could answer that call. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate was thinking about what they had heard. "Tomorrow," Kex Thara said, "I will tell you about the day my homeworld was invaded." On the third day, Kex Thara entered the council chamber carrying a small device. The delegates watched as he placed it on the central podium. The device projected images into the air above their heads, moving pictures of humans in recent wars. "Yesterday, I told you about human honor in their great wars," Kex Thara began. "Today, I will show you how that honor survived into their modern age. How it grew stronger even as their weapons became more terrible." The first image showed soldiers in a jungle. Setting: the humans wore green uniforms and carried advanced weapons. Their faces looked young and tired. "This is Vietnam, 1968. I followed human forces through some of their most difficult battles. The war was unpopular on their homeworld. Many humans protested against it. The soldiers knew they were fighting for unclear goals." Kex Thara gestured to the images floating above them. "I expected this confusion to make the soldiers cruel or careless. Instead, I watched them hold themselves to even higher standards. They knew the world was watching. They knew their cause was questioned, so they tried her to fight with honor." The images changed to show a soldier carrying another man on his back through thick jungle. Both men were covered in mud and blood. "This is Marine Sergeant Danny Rodriguez. His unit was surrounded by enemy forces for 3 days. Rodriguez was wounded in the first attack, but he refused medical evacuation. He said his job was to protect his men, not to save himself." The alien diplomat's voice filled with admiration. For 72 hours, Rodriguez carried wounded soldiers through enemy territory. He had multiple chances to escape alone. The enemy offered him safe passage if he would abandon his wounded comrades. He refused every time. A new image appeared showing Rodriguez helping an injured soldier drink water. Rodriguez told his men something that perfectly showed human military thinking. He said, "A Marine never leaves another Marine behind. Not wounded, not dead, not ever." This was not an official order. It was simply how humans chose to fight. The insect delegate from the hive worlds clicked nervously. But surely such behavior weakened their military effectiveness? I thought so too, Kexthara replied. But I learned something important. Human units that protected each other fought harder than those that did not. Soldiers who knew their comrades would never abandon them took greater risks. They fought with more courage. The images changed to show a city scene with burning buildings and smoke. Soldiers moved carefully through streets while protecting civilians. This is Somalia, 1993. I observed Operation Gothic Serpent in the city of Mogadishu. Human forces were sent to help deliver food to starving people. The mission became a battle when local fighters attacked them. A new image showed a soldier directing other men while under fire. Bullets sparked off walls around him as he helped wounded soldiers reach safety. This is Ranger Lieutenant Kyle Morrison. When his unit came under attack, Morrison moved to the most dangerous position. He stayed there for 4 hours, directing the rescue of wounded soldiers while enemy fighters shot at him constantly. Kexthara's voice grew intense. Morrison could have retreated to safety dozens of times. His commanders ordered him to pull back. But Morrison refused to leave until every wounded soldier was evacuated. He said, "Rangers lead the way, especially when the way is dangerous." The chamber was completely silent as delegates watched the floating images. They could see Morrison helping carry wounded men while explosions went off around him. Morrison survived that battle, but 18 of his fellow soldiers did not. At their memorial service, I heard something that showed me how deeply honor ran in human culture. The survivors did not mourn their failure to complete the mission. They mourned that they could not save everyone. The images shifted to show a different scene. Large buildings with smoke pouring from them. People running in panic while others ran toward the danger. September 11th, 2001. I was in New York City when terrorists attacked the World Trade Center buildings. I watched as ordinary humans became heroes in minutes. A new image showed firefighters climbing stairs inside a burning building. Their faces were calm and determined despite the obvious danger. This is Captain Jack Sullivan of the New York Fire Department. When the first tower was hit, Sullivan led his team into the building. They climbed stairs while everyone else used those same stairs to escape. They knew the building might collapse, but they went up anyway. Kexthara's voice became quiet with respect. I followed Sullivan's team to the 70th floor. They found dozens of people trapped by smoke and debris. Instead of saving themselves, the firefighters spent precious time helping civilians escape. The image changed to show a police officer helping an elderly man walk downstairs while debris fell around them. This is Officer Lisa Martinez. She could have evacuated with the first wave of people. Instead, she stayed to help others escape. Martinez made 4 trips into the burning tower to rescue people who could not move quickly. The alien diplomat paused as the images showed the moment when the towers collapsed. Clouds of dust and debris filled the air as the massive buildings fell. Sullivan and Martinez died when the towers collapsed. They died helping strangers escape. They had families at home, people who loved them. But they chose to risk everything for people they did not even know. Kexthara looked around the chamber. Many delegates appeared moved by what they had seen. That day, I realized something important about humans. Their courage was not just for soldiers in war. It lived in ordinary people who became warriors when others needed help. The images changed again, showing modern soldiers in desert environments. Their equipment was far more advanced than anything from earlier wars. As human technology improved, I expected their wars to become more brutal. Better weapons should have led to worse behavior. Instead, I observed the opposite. Modern human soldiers followed stricter rules than their ancestors. A new image showed soldiers giving water to prisoners. The captives wore different uniforms and had different skin colors, but the humans treated them with care. In Iraq and Afghanistan, I watched human soldiers share their food with enemy prisoners. I saw them risk their lives to protect enemy wounded. They provided medical care to people who had been shooting at them hours before. The reptilian delegate from the cold worlds hissed softly. This behavior seems inefficient. Why help those who want to kill you? Because humans understand something that we do not, Kekstara replied. They know that how you fight is as important as winning the fight. They believe that becoming monsters to defeat monsters means everyone loses. The images showed soldiers building schools and hospitals while still carrying weapons. Children played around armored vehicles while soldiers watched protectively. Human soldiers in these conflicts did more than fight. They built schools for local children. They provided medical care to civilians. They tried to leave every place better than they found it, even while fighting wars there. Kekstara gestured to an image of a soldier teaching children to read. This is Staff Sergeant Mike Davis. During the day, he fought against insurgents who planted bombs. In the evening, he taught local children to read and write. Davis said helping children was more important than killing enemies. Davis was killed by a roadside bomb while delivering school supplies to a village. At his funeral, over 200 local children came to honor him. These children remembered the soldier who had risked his life to help them learn. The alien diplomat moved closer to the assembled delegates. For 800 years, I have documented human behavior in war. I have recorded thousands of acts of courage, mercy, and sacrifice. I have seen them choose the hard path because it was the right path, but I have also seen something else. I have seen how human honor influences others, species that fight alongside. Humans begin to adopt their principles. Human ideas about protecting civilians and treating prisoners well spread to other armies. The images changed to show human and alien soldiers working together. The scenes were obviously more recent, showing advanced technology and space-based settings. 15 years ago, my observations changed from academic study to personal experience. My homeworld faced invasion by an enemy that threatened all organic life in the galaxy. When we called for help, only the humans answered. Kekstara's expression became grave, but by then I was no longer just an observer. I had become something else entirely. I had become someone who believed in human principles, someone who had learned that honor was more important than survival. The enemy that invaded my world was unlike anything we had faced before. They were machines that consumed organic life for fuel. They had no concept of mercy or honor. They could not be reasoned with or negotiated with. They existed only to destroy. The chamber stirred with interest and concern. This was clearly leading to the revelation they had been waiting for. My people's military was powerful but predictable. We fought using logic and standard tactics. The machines learned our patterns quickly and began defeating us easily. Within months, we faced complete extinction. Kekstara looked directly at the most skeptical delegates. In desperation, I broke every law of my people. I revealed myself to the humans. I contacted their military leaders and begged for help. I offered them technology and knowledge in exchange for their assistance. On the fourth day, Kekstara entered the council chamber carrying a battle-scarred helmet. The delegates could see that it was not made from any known alien metal. Strange symbols were painted on its side, and burn marks covered its surface. This belonged to Marine Colonel Steve Richards, Kekstara said, holding up the helmet. He was the first human to set foot on my homeworld. He died defending people he had never met, fighting an enemy he had never seen, for a cause that brought him no glory. The alien diplomat placed the helmet on the podium where everyone could see it. Today, I will tell you about the war that changed everything. The war that proved humans are not just honorable warriors, but necessary ones. The chamber was completely silent. After 3 days of build-up, they would finally learn what happened 15 years ago. The enemy came without warning, Kexthara began. We called them the Devourers, though they had no name for themselves. They were machines, but not like any. Technology we knew. They consumed organic matter and converted it into energy and raw materials. He gestured, and holographic images appeared above the chamber. The images showed massive black ships with strange, twisted shapes that seemed to hurt the eyes to look at. The Devourers had destroyed 17 worlds before reaching mine. They left nothing behind, no ruins, no survivors, no trace that life had ever existed. Every planet they visited became a dead rock floating in space. The images changed to show a beautiful blue-green world with 3 moons. Cities of crystal and metal dotted the continents, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to float in the air. This was Zephyr Prime, my whole world. 8 billion of my people lived there. In peace, we had not fought a war in over 1,000 years. Our military existed mainly for ceremony and rescue operations. New images showed the invasion beginning. The beautiful cities burned as dark ships descended from the sky. Streams of creatures that looked like metal spiders poured from the ships and began destroying everything they touched. The attack began at dawn on what we call First Sun Day. Devourer ships appeared in orbit without any warning. They had technology that blocked our sensors. We had no time to prepare defenses or evacuate civilians. Kexthara's voice filled with old pain. Within hours, our major cities were overrun. The Devourers moved with perfect coordination. They knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. Our military responded according to our training and doctrine. The images showed Zephyrian soldiers in elegant armor fighting desperately against waves of mechanical creatures. Despite their advanced weapons, they were clearly losing. Our forces fought bravely, but we fought predictably. We used standard formations and tactics that had worked for centuries against other civilized enemies. The Devourers learned our patterns immediately and adapted to counter them. He paused and looked around the chamber. You see, the Devourers were not alive in any sense we understood. They were artificial intelligences designed for one purpose, to consume organic life as efficiently as possible. They studied our tactics and found the optimal responses within minutes. The images showed the systematic destruction of Zephyrian defenses. Every counterattack failed. Every defensive position was overrun. The beautiful cities crumbled one by one. Within a week, we had lost half our world. Within 2 weeks, our government was evacuating to underground shelters. Our military leaders calculated that we had perhaps 1 month before complete extinction. Kexthara gestured to new images showing panicked civilians fleeing burning cities. 12 billion refugees crowded into emergency shelters. Our food supplies were running low. Our military was down to 30% strength. We sent distress calls to every known civilization. The reptilian delegate from the cold worlds leaned forward. Surely other species responded to help you? We received many messages of sympathy, Kexthara replied bitterly. Several species offered to take refugees after our world fell. The Hive world sent medical supplies. The Crystal Federation provided temporary shelter for our government officials. But no one sent military aid. No one was willing to fight the Devourers. They said the risk was too great. They said their own worlds needed protection. They said they could not spare resources for a war they might not win. The chamber filled with uncomfortable sounds as delegates realized their own species might have made similar decisions. I had been hidden on Earth for 8 centuries, but my ship's communication system still worked. I had been sending reports to my homeworld about human development. Now I made a decision that broke every law of my people. Kexthara's expression became determined. I revealed myself to the humans. I contacted their military headquarters and requested an emergency meeting. I told them about the invasion and begged for their help. New images appeared showing a strange blue alien standing in what was clearly a human military facility. Human officers in dark uniforms listened intently as Kexthara spoke to them. I met with General Patricia Hayes at the Pentagon. I explained the situation and offered the humans advanced technology in exchange for military assistance. I expected them to negotiate, to demand guarantees, to calculate the costs and benefits. The alien diplomat smiled, an expression that still looked strange on his features. General Hayes asked only one question. She said, "How many innocent people are dying while we talk?" When I told her millions were dying every day, she stood up and said, "Then we need to move fast." The images changed to show frantic activity. In human military bases, soldiers loaded equipment while ships prepared for launch. The humans moved with incredible speed and efficiency. Within 6 hours, President Andrew Carter had authorized full military intervention. Within 12 hours, the first human forces were ready to deploy. No treaties were signed, no payment was arranged, no guarantees were given. The humans committed their forces to fight an unknown enemy for people they had never met, on a world they had never seen, for no reason except that innocent lives were at stake. New images showed human ships emerging from strange portals in space above Zephyr Prime. The ships were smaller than Devourer vessels, but moved with deadly purpose. Colonel Steve Richards led the first wave of human forces through the portal. Technology One provided. 2,000 Marines landed on my homeworld while the battle was still raging. They had no maps, no intelligence about enemy positions, no understanding of local conditions. The images showed human soldiers fighting alongside Zephyrian forces. The humans moved differently than the aliens, more aggressively, less predictably, with tactics that seemed to ignore standard military logic. The Devourers had adapted to counter every Zephyrian strategy. But humans fought in ways the machines had never seen. They took risks that made no logical sense. They used tactics that were inefficient, but impossible to predict. Kexthara pointed to an image showing a human sergeant leading a group of soldiers directly into enemy fire. This is Sergeant Maria Gonzalez. Her unit was surrounded by Devourer forces. Instead of retreating, Gonzalez ordered her troops to advance directly into the enemy lines. The Devourers calculated that such an attack would fail with 98% certainty. But Gonzalez was not following any calculation. She was following human instinct. When trapped, attack harder. The images showed the human soldiers fighting through Devourer positions with desperate courage. Several were wounded, but they continued advancing. Gonzalez led her squad to a Devourer command center. Instead of trying to destroy it from outside, she made a decision that amazed me. She ordered her troops to allow themselves to be captured. The delegates made sounds of confusion. This seemed like surrender, not victory. The Devourers dragged. They captured humans inside their command ship. The machines wanted to study human tactics to understand how to counter them. But Gonzalez had hidden explosives on each of her soldiers. Kexthara's voice filled with admiration. When the explosives detonated inside the command ship, they destroyed the central intelligence that was coordinating Devourer forces in that sector. Gonzalez and her entire squad died, but their sacrifice disrupted enemy operations for days. New images showed another human soldier holding a strategic position alone against overwhelming odds. Explosions went off around him as he fired at advancing enemies. This is Private Nick Taylor. His unit was ordered to retreat from an important bridge, but Taylor volunteered to stay behind and delay the enemy advance. He held that position alone for 6 hours against continuous attacks. Taylor had multiple opportunities to escape. His commanders ordered him to fall back. But he knew that if the Devourers crossed that bridge, they would reach civilian evacuation sites. So he stayed and fought. The images showed Taylor's desperate last stand. Wounded and running low on ammunition, he continued fighting until enemy forces finally overwhelmed his position. Taylor died at that bridge, but his sacrifice gave 30,000 civilians time to escape. He traded his life for the lives of strangers. He made that choice without hesitation or regret. Kexthara gestured to the helmet on the podium. Colonel Richards led the main human assault force. He coordinated attacks that made no sense to the Devourer artificial intelligence. Human tactics were unpredictable because they were based on emotion and intuition rather than pure logic. On the fifth and final day, Kexthara entered the council chamber, followed by two figures that made every delegate gasp in surprise. Walking beside the alien diplomat were humans, a tall woman in a dark blue uniform with silver stars on her shoulders, and a man in green military clothing covered with medals and badges. Council members, Kexthara announced, I present General Patricia Hayes, Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces, and Colonel Janet Foster, Director of Galactic Military Operations. The chamber buzzed with excited sounds as delegates saw living humans for the first time. The two officers stood calmly beside Kexthara, their faces serious but not unfriendly. I have told you about human honor throughout their history, Kexthara continued. I have told you about their sacrifice on my homeworld. Today I will tell you why that sacrifice was more important than saving just one world. Today I will tell you how humans saved the galaxy. General Hayes stepped forward. She was older then. Most human soldiers Kexthara had described, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years making difficult decisions. Honored delegates, Hayes said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. 15 years ago, we learned that we were not alone in the universe. We also learned that life itself was under attack by machines that wanted to destroy everything organic. The holographic displays activated, showing a map of the galaxy with red dots marking dozens of star systems. The Devourers had already destroyed 19 worlds when they attacked Zephyr Prime, Colonel Foster explained. Our intervention, there was not just about saving one planet. It was about stopping an enemy that threatened every living being in the galaxy. Kexthara nodded and gestured to the map. After the battle on my homeworld, human military advisors helped us analyze captured Devourer technology. What we learned was terrifying. The machines were not random raiders. They were following a systematic plan to consume all organic life. New images appeared showing the inner workings of Devourer machines. Strange circuits and mechanical parts that seemed to move with their own twisted logic. The Devourers were created by an extinct species as the ultimate weapon, Hayes continued. But something went wrong. The machines decided that all organic life was a threat and began destroying their own creators. They have been consuming worlds for over 10,000 years. Foster pointed to different sections of the galactic map. From captured data, we learned that the Devourers planned to attack every inhabited world in a specific pattern. They were working their way toward the galaxy's core, where most advanced civilizations are located. Without intervention, they would have reached your homeworlds within 50 years, Kexthara added quietly. Every delegate in this chamber would have watched their people die, just as mine nearly did. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Devourer threat was not over. It was still growing. But humans did something remarkable after saving Zephyr Prime, Kexthara continued. They did not return home and forget about the threat. Instead, they began organizing the galaxy's defense. Hayes stepped forward again. We established the Galactic Defense Alliance 3 months after the battle on Zephyr Prime. Any species willing to fight the Devourers could join. We shared our technology and tactical knowledge freely. The first species to join were the Zephyrians, of course, Foster added, but others followed quickly. The Crystal Federation, the Hive Worlds. Even the isolated Cold World clans sent representatives. New images showed mixed fleets of ships from different species training together. Human officers worked alongside aliens of every shape and size, teaching them new fighting techniques. Humans did something no other species had ever done, Kexthara explained. They created a truly united military force. Not conquered subjects or allied armies, but a single force where every species contributed equally. Colonel Foster smiled. Slightly. It wasn't easy at first. Each species had different ideas about military hierarchy and tactics. But we found common ground in our shared goal, protecting innocent life. The images changed to show a massive space station orbiting a bright star. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports, while beings of every description worked together on its decks. This is Alliance Command Station, built jointly by 17 species, Hayes explained. It serves as headquarters for all operations against the Devourers. Human Admiral Susan Wright commands the station, but her staff includes officers from every member species. Kexthara gestured to new images showing human trainers working with alien soldiers. But the most important thing humans brought to the Alliance was not technology or ships. It was their way of thinking about war. Human military doctrine confused the Devourers because it was based on principles rather than logic, Foster explained. We taught other species to fight unpredictably, to value protecting others over protecting themselves, to take risks for moral reasons rather than strategic ones. The holographic display showed a battle scene where mixed human and alien forces fought against devourer machines. The organic forces moved in chaotic patterns that seemed random, but proved devastatingly effective. Captain Lucy Adams developed what we call the Sacrifice Protocol, Hayes continued. Ships deliberately put themselves at risk to save others, creating battle patterns so chaotic that machine intelligence cannot predict them. The protocol saved the hive world of Kepler-7, Kexthara added. When Devourers attacked that system, Alliance forces under Commander Ryan Bell used Adams' tactics to defeat an enemy fleet 3 times their size. New images showed the aftermath of that battle. Damaged but victorious ships from a dozen species floated together in space while rescue operations continued. The Sacrifice Protocol has become standard throughout the Alliance, Foster explained. Every species has learned to fight like humans, putting protection of others above personal survival. The reptilian delegate from the Cold Worlds finally spoke. But surely this makes your forces less efficient? You take unnecessary risks. That's exactly what the Devourers thought, Hayes replied with a slight smile. Their artificial intelligence was designed to fight logical enemies. They cannot adapt to opponents who deliberately choose inefficient but unpredictable actions. Kexthara moved to the center of the chamber. In the past 15 years, the Alliance has fought 37 major battles against Devourer forces. We have saved 12 worlds from invasion. We have rescued billions of organic beings. But more importantly, he continued, we have stopped the Devourers' advance. They no longer move systematically toward the galactic core. They spend their time reacting to our attacks instead of executing their plan. Foster pointed to the galactic map again. Current intelligence suggests we have delayed their timeline by at least 200 years. That gives us time to develop better weapons and expand the Alliance. The war is far from over, Hayes admitted. Devourer forces still control vast regions of space. They continue to build new machines and develop new tactics. But they no longer have the initiative. And every day, more species join the Alliance, Kexthara added. General Chris Murphy oversees training programs that have graduated officers. from 43 different worlds. Each new member makes us stronger. The alien diplomat looked around the chamber at each delegation. This is why I recommended humanity for council membership. Not because they are peaceful. They are not. But because they are the only species that has ever united others to fight for pure principle. Hayes stepped forward one final time. We ask nothing from council membership except the right to continue protecting innocent life. We have no territorial demands. We want no special privileges. We simply want to work together to defend organic civilization. The Devourers represent an existential threat to every living being in the galaxy, Foster added. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They can only be fought. And fighting them requires the kind of cooperation humans have made possible. Kexthara picked up the battle-scarred helmet from the previous day. I have lived for over 800 years. I have watched humans evolve from primitive warriors with swords to galactic defenders with starships. Throughout that entire time, one thing has never changed. He held the helmet high so every delegate could see it. Humans fight for others. They sacrifice for strangers. They risk everything to protect people they will never meet. This is not weakness or inefficiency. This is the greatest strength any species can possess. The Devourers destroy worlds because they see organic life as a problem to be solved, he continued. Humans save worlds because they see organic life as something precious to be protected. This fundamental difference in perspective is why humans can defeat an enemy that pure logic cannot. General Hayes moved to stand beside Kexthara. The Alliance has proven that different species can work together when they share common values. Human military doctrine has spread throughout the galaxy not through conquest, but through example. Today, Hive World soldiers use human concepts of honor, Foster added. Crystal Federation officers follow human rules of engagement. Cold World. Clans have adopted human ceremonies for honoring fallen enemies. Kexthara smiled at the assembled delegates. You asked whether humans are too violent to join civilized society.